Hi, She. Thank you so much for being part of the summit. I'm so excited to talk with you today.
Thanks, Dallas. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, let me introduce you for people who haven't met you yet. So, Chen is a certified business coach who supports values driven entrepreneurs and coaches to become the go to expert in their industry and sign dream clients. And in particular, today, we're going to be talking about magnetic messaging for authors. She is the queen of messaging, so good at magnetic messaging. And especially, we were just chatting before we hit record that I think a lot of authors struggle with, like, how do I write a description of my book that makes people actually interested in wanting to read it? It can be so hard. Like, you spend all this time over so many pages, like distilling all this wisdom. And it's like, how do I try to get all of that into, a few paragraphs, like a description of my book? So it's just something that I think a lot of people have a stumbling block around. We might even go into some mindset issues that come up there. But so I really am excited to talk about like how to craft a book description that makes readers really just want to read your book right now. So thank you for sharing your wisdom with us.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk and really be able to share a little bit more about how messaging could help people want to buy your book.
Yeah. So let's maybe we can start off with, I guess, like starting like with simple messaging. So like what is your I guess the starting point for if a writer wants to create some messaging about their book, like I guess keeping it simple or starting from a place of simplicity, like what is your advice there for maybe how we can start off describing our books and also trying to like differentiate our books?
Yeah, so I love starting out with like simple messaging because I think a lot of times people want to jump in right away with like how do I make it different? How do I make it stand out? Right? There's so many other authors that have books. Like how can I really be able to, draw in the right people right away? But I
Mhm.
think that can lead to a lot of like overwhelm and just a lot of just like spinning your wheels. And so I like to start out with simple messaging in terms of just focusing on your reader, but also really understand that most readers want certain things, right? Like really
Mhm.
understanding, what do your readers want? What value will it provide to your reader's life? What problem will your book solve for them? And honestly, it's going to be one of three things, right? Especially if you're writing like a nonfiction book,
Mhm.
right? They're going to want like how they want better relationships, or they want to feel more fulfilled at work, or maybe they want to make
Mhm.
more money. And so just like really being able to start with why, like what value are they going to get from reading your book, is a really great place to start, knowing that that's basically your job, right, to be able to help them with that. And if you're writing like a fiction book, I mean, the value could really simply be to entertain,
Yeah.
or to help them to feel something, to think something differently. But I think if you're really able to start with that foundational piece of, this is what people will walk away with,
Mhm.
that's how you can build your messaging around.
I love that. I think that's such a great like foundation to kind of drill down into, that we sometimes, like you're saying, we lose sight of that with all the noise, and we want to be different, we want to be splashy, or we're just like trying to think of, well, how can we describe this, which I agree with you so much, that like getting at the root of what you're trying to help people with. And I think that is such a great place to start. And that's a lot of work that I'm assuming people have probably already done some of that work in the writing of the book, right? So, like, go back to your
Mhm.
introduction, or I have my clients often, the first thing we do is like come up with a why statement of like, why are you writing this book? Which there's usually a reason for you personally, but also a problem that you're trying to help people with. So, I love the idea of like getting back to basics, going back to that and starting from that point. And I think
Exactly.
keeping it simple too is great, because often like readers don't have a ton of time, right? I mean, I'm sure that like simplicity with messaging, you want them to really know very clearly like what problem you're helping them solve.
Exactly. And then once you have that figured out, right, then you can really start to differentiate yourself with your specific point of view, right? With your story, with the lens that you're using to write your book, with your perspective. And I think that's when you're able to really shine and really be able to play with what makes this book different, what makes this book unique, what makes this book specific to a certain type of audience. That's where you can kind of add in your flavor.
Yeah, I love that. So it's like thinking about the main problem that your book solves, or like you're saying fiction, like what genre it is or what escape is it? And then, yeah, how is your book different from the other books that also try to solve that same problem? That's so good. Well, kind of related to that, I think that a common challenge, you and I agree with, like writing a book description, is that you might be kind of too close to the work. And so it's almost like you know your book so well that you maybe want to include all the things, or you just sort of feel like maybe it's hard for you to kind of get that distance on it. So do you have any advice for people who, maybe feel like they're too close to their book to even write that description?
Yeah, I think it's just really wanting to put yourself into the reader's shoes when you're doing that too. So a lot of times when we write, it's like you have your certain lens that you write from. But again, you want to be able to flip it in the way to say, like, if I'm receiving this message, how will it land, or how will it feel? And I think that's how you can sort of filter it in terms of it being really purposeful and intentional for your work.
Mhm.
And I think just like feedback would be really great too, if you're able to just share some of your summary or messaging with people who may be, of the same, like kind of like your target market, and getting some
Mhm.
feedback from them too, and just really listening to what are some of the words that they're using. Well, how would they describe what they like about this summary, or what they enjoy about this book, and really being able to hear it in their own words too can really help you have like a word bank of language to be able to write with.
That is such a great tip. I love that so much. And I think as writers, we often think about getting feedback on our work, to help make it better, which is true. But I love how the way that you describe it almost makes me think of like you're getting a little sneak peek into, like you're saying, the language that your ideal reader might use, so that then when you're trying to write your description, you can, you still want it to sound like you, but it seems like in order for your messaging to really be magnetic, you want your ideal reader to be kind of like, ooh, that sounds like me too, or that sounds like someone that I would be friends with, or that sounds like someone that I would want to have a conversation with. I mean, do you think that's important to try to, like pepper in some of that language that your ideal reader might use as well?
Yeah, I think you bring up a great point to really be able to blend in a little bit of your own voice, but also so that it also reflects how your reader will, the words that they will might read or relate to as well.
Mhm. And I
Yeah.
think this is something I was actually talking with a client about the other day with writing her entire book. We were talking about, she's writing a business book, and she was saying that so many business books that she reads have such like a masculine energy and like a lot of masculine language, and just giving herself permission to really like that she can write about a topic like business, but still do it in a way that feels really feminine and fun and like conversational. And so I think sometimes I see we put pressure on ourselves, especially for like that book description. Somehow it almost feels like a whole separate piece than our book itself, that like we might have had
Yeah.
this whole voice in our book, and then it's time to write our back cover description, and all of a sudden it's like super formal, and it's like we've lost that voice from the book. So I just think that's such great advice to like sink into your voice and also the voice of your audience, which will not only help you with the messaging on your back cover, but I think that will help you. That's like a great tip to help you with the messaging throughout your entire book. Like once you kind of get some of that feedback from your ideal reader of like words they would use to describe their problem, it's such a great tip. Okay, the last thing I wanted to talk with you about is imposter syndrome, which is something that I just think all creatives have to deal with. Maybe all of us in general have to deal with, as entrepreneurs or as book writers. I think it's just so common during the creative process. And I would just love to hear your thoughts for, I guess, kind of dealing with this and reframing it, because I do think that also can be a huge trigger and a huge block when we are finally writing the description of our book, because it usually happens at the end, towards the end of the process where we're getting ready to
Yeah.
share our book. So will you talk to us a little bit about imposter syndrome and what tips or advice you have around that?
Yeah, I think imposter syndrome really does affect a lot of creatives, especially because it can kind of be like the voice of, oh, like what if somebody finds out that I'm not really an expert, or what if somebody finds out that this book is just okay, you know? And but I
Mhm.
think it's just so normal, and it really is a part of the process. So I think just recognizing it for what it is, that it will come up, and it's just a matter of how you deal with it when it does come up.
Yeah.
I think one thing that I've really noticed is the sense of belonging and how that really affects imposter syndrome. And I think an affirmation that I like to use is like, it's, you know, it's safe to use my voice, or it's
Mm.
safe to share my story and things like that. And I think once you're able to kind of address that firsthand, like your worthiness isn't up for debate, right? It's just like you're already inherently worthy, you already belong. um, and I think it's just knowing that your words, your story, your book, it will help somebody, right? And so
Mhm.
just being able to release that to the world today, you know, sooner rather than waiting for it to be perfect, or waiting for you to, you know, get more expertise or whatever. But I think it's just really understanding that you, as the author, you're the messenger for your message, and somebody
Mm.
needs to hear it today. So um, might as well recognize that and be able to release that into the world.
I love that antidote of belonging as like an antidote to imposter syndrome. I think that's so
Yeah.
true, and recognizing that, like you're saying, we all deal with it. Do you feel like, as you were talking, something that came up for me is this idea of like perfectionism, especially with our messaging? Like, is that something that you see come up with your clients a lot? I mean, is there sort of a time where we have to sort of just let our messaging go, kind of be like, this is as perfect as it's going to be? And
Yeah.
I mean, do you have any thoughts around that?
Oh, for sure. I think I see perfectionism come up because you people want to get it right. Like maybe they feel
Mhm.
like there's so much pressure to feel like, oh, my one summary
Mhm.
will make or break the difference between someone reading my book and not, right? There could be a lot of pressure in that. However, I always just, recommend that, it's like, can you get it like 80%, maybe 90%
Mhm.
perfect instead of 100%? Because if you're going to shoot for 100%, you may never get there,
Yeah.
right? And then again, like your audience, your reader, that's more important, that they get this book into their hands rather than, like really crafting the exact words of your book summary. So that definitely comes up for sure. And I think it's just really remembering, like, what is the bigger purpose here is for people to actually read
Yeah.
read your book.
Yeah, exactly. Which like
Yeah.
ties us back, brings us back to your first point about like getting back down to that foundation of what problem you're solving, like why you wrote your book. I think that's such a great place to both begin and end, because it really is like at the heart of your messaging. And like you're saying, if you are so caught up on trying to make your messaging, whatever that is, whether it's like the back cover description of your book, or even later on when you're writing social media posts about your book, it's like if you're trying to just make those perfect, whatever perfect means to you, and you're not actually sharing them, it's like you're holding your book back from reaching those people. So I think that's so important. So many great tips. Thank you, She. And I know we kind of just hit like the tip of the iceberg. As far as messaging, like I just mentioned, I mean, we were focusing on back cover description, but there are so many different instances of like creating messaging around your book, creating that magnetic messaging, whether it's through social media posts or advertising or other types of promotion. So you have a wonderful free gift for us today that's like a great place for people to start, the business message makeover. Do you want to describe that a little bit, for people who are interested in taking advantage?
Yeah, absolutely. So the business message makeover, this is a resource that I created after just working one-on-one with my clients through their messaging. And I think this will be really helpful for you if you're trying to craft like your author bio, because it'll really help you to understand, like, who are you talking to? How are you different? What's the value that you provide for them, in a
Mhm.
way that's like can wrap it up in like a succinct little one-liner. And so if you would like to get that resource, then you can just head over to my website and download that.
Perfect. And I'll include the link below too. So why don't you share too, for people who just want more of you, they want to connect with you. You share such great tips on social media. I follow you on Instagram and your Facebook group. So definitely want to encourage people to follow you and connect with you for more of your insights. What's the best way for people to do that?
Yeah, I love hanging out on Instagram. So I'm at Chen Coaching. And I also lead a Facebook community called Fully Booked and Fulfilled Entrepreneurs.
Wonderful. I'll include those links below too. Well, thank you so much for being part of the summit. And you've definitely given me some things to think about with like my messaging for my book. So just really appreciate your expertise. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm so glad to be here. Thank you.